Well, the faithful from around the world gathered at the Vatican this morning for the funeral of Pope Francis. The 88-year-old died on Easter Monday from a stroke and heart failure.
We have team coverage for you this morning. We begin with Tina Kraus live from the Vatican with how the pontiff was honored in an outdoor mass in St. Peter's Square. Hi there, Tina.
Hi, Jennifer and Elaine. Well, a mix of mourners, world leaders, and royalty packed St. Peter's Square behind me for the simplified ceremony to honor Pope Francis. Now, a 9-day mourning period has begun. This is known as Novim Dialis, when 9 masses will be held for the Pope in St. Peter's Basilica.
The solemn funeral mass for Pope Francis drew hundreds of thousands of mourners to Vatican City.
He was a pope among the people.
Francis's simple wooden coffin was placed in St. Peter's Square for the service, close to Catholic leaders and dignitaries, including President Trump. The first reading delivered by journalist Kelsey Gussie from Florida.
A reading from the Acts of the Apostles. Truly, I understand that God shows no partiality.
Last night, people from around the world got one last look at the late pontiff inside St. Peter's Basilica before his face was covered and the coffin sealed. Many of them camped out overnight to pay their respects at the funeral hours later.
He's going to be one that will be remembered for helping those definitely can't help themselves.
Known as the People's Pope, Francis broke with tradition in life and death, choosing not to be buried here at St. Peter's Basilica, but instead at his favorite church in Rome.
The pontiff's beloved Pope Mobile carried his coffin to the Basilica of St. Mary Major. The nearly 4-mile procession marked the first time in modern history a pope's body was taken through the heart of the Eternal City.
That is very special because he wants to be around everyone.
The end of one papacy opening the door for another. The Catholic Church now enters 9 days of mourning for Pope Francis before cardinals set a date for the papal conclave to choose their next leader.
The 91-year-old Italian cardinal who eulogized Pope Francis called him the Pope of the people, a pastor who knew how to communicate to the least among us with an informal and spontaneous style. Jennifer, Elaine.
All right, thank you, Tina Kraus. The Catholic community in our area is also mourning Pope Francis. Our team coverage continues now with John Diaz, who is live from St. Patrick's Cathedral. Good morning, John. Talk to us about the mood out there.
Yeah, good morning to both of you. Well, you know, somber mood out here in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral. A lot of people just got done from going into that 8 o'clock mass. But let me tell you, a lot of people just saying that he was the people's pope, as we continue to say. He really just made an impact across the entire world. Now, churches really across the entire tri-state area, they continue to honor the legacy of Pope Francis, including the Diocese of Brooklyn. Just one of many parishioners packed St. Bartholomew's in Elmhurst, Queens, Friday night. Many parishioners there are saying, you know, it's important to remember Pope Francis for the big things he did, but also his small gestures that he made, especially as a pope for the last 12 years. Now, for 3 days, tens of thousands of mourners waited in line for hours to say farewell. Many here in New York wishing they too could be a part of it all, but feeling it's still a connection really in churches across the tri-state area. Take a listen, though, now to what some Christians had to say as they headed into Mass here earlier this morning at St. Patrick's.
The word Catholic means universal, and so I'm Catholic with the Universal Church. So whether you're in Rome, China, or New York, it's the same church. We belong to the mystical body of Christ.
He lived such a humble life, was symbiotic of what you know, all Christian faith can be about, and just, you know, produce a great message for the world.
The hope that he instilled in a lot of people that maybe had lost their Catholic faith, those that maybe even weren't Catholic, could relate to him, which to me is just a symbol of hope.
Now, coming up in about a half an hour from now, you're going to hear from some local, actually New Jersey residents who are over there in Rome. They are there for his funeral, as our Tony Aiello is also over there, and he just got done speaking with them. For now, though, we are live this morning from outside St. Patrick's Cathedral. John Diaz, CBS News, New York.
All right, John, thank you so much. The world continues to say goodbye to Pope Francis.
Yeah, we're joined now by an expert on church-state relations at Seton Hall, Dr. Joe Formicola. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
What were some moments that stuck out to you during this funeral?
I think the fact that there were so many people there and so many different kinds of people there. This was a pope who had the most unbelievable ability to identify with all different kinds of people. He was not just a religious leader, but he was very human himself, very humane himself, even what theologians would call prophetic himself, for the fact that he was able to take principles such as justice and be able to take them to a higher level, to talk about justice in terms of mercy, or to talk about life in terms of all of the poor or the disabled or those who were dying or those who had been divorced or those who were gay. He saw that all life for all kinds of people was precious. And he did this not just in a theological way or a political way as head of the Vatican state as well, but he did it through his writings, through his speeches, through his travels, through his own personal example, so that people were able to identify with him on very different levels, and because of that had such great respect and love for him, and will definitely mourn his passing. I am a church-state specialist, and so I look at him from the perspective of how did he bring his religious beliefs and his political actions together. And clearly, I mean, his outreach to Africa, his outreach to China, his recognition of the fact that there was so much more that needed to be done in Europe and the United States to bring religion back to the people. He wasn't afraid to bring others in or to castigate those who were not practicing what they should have been practicing.
And this morning it was striking to hear during Cardinal Ray's homily at the Pope's funeral mass, at various points when he recounted Francis's emphasis on those very issues that you talked about, those in attendance applauded, which is not something, as was noted, that you often hear during a homily, particularly at the funeral of a pope. But with all of that in mind, tell us about what takes place next here for the Vatican, for the Catholic Church.
It's very hard to say as an outsider. As an insider, it's going to be very political as well as religious. I mean, what we do know is that the papacy is 2,000 years old. And within any institution that's 2,000 years old, you're going to have various groups who want to carry on tradition, those who want to make change. You're going to have many different views as to the way the church should be going. You have groups of people who have worked together in their own countries or in their own continents who see different needs of people, what kind of agendas should occur, much just like you see in the political process. So it's going to be religious, but it's also going to be political in deciding which way the church is going to place its emphasis in the future.
And with that in mind, how might the Pope's legacy perhaps shape who is chosen next?
Well, he has managed in his own way to appoint a number of cardinals to the agency that's going to be picking the new Pope. And many of them have been progressive and have been followers of his ideas. And this is going to play, I'm sure, very significantly into the final disposition of who's going to be chosen.
All right. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And world leaders were in Vatican City for the funeral to pay their respects. That includes President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, who met before the services. The White House says they spoke for about 15 minutes inside St. Peter's Basilica, calling the conversation about ending the Russia-Ukraine war productive. It was the pair's first face-to-face conversation since Zelensky's contentious Oval Office visit back in February.
You can watch our coverage of the life and legacy of Pope Francis on air, online, and on our website at cbsnewyork.com.